Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're tackling one of the most misunderstood and, let's be honest, frequently skipped texts in all of history, First Chronicles 2. At first glance, yeah, it looks like a super dry, ancient registry. But as we're going to see, it's actually this beautiful, masterful map of human identity and divine grace. I mean, let's be real. Have you ever literally fallen asleep reading the begots in the Bible? You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're cruising along, the story's great, and bam, you hit this massive wall of endless names. So-and-so begot so-and-so, who begot so-and-so. Your eyes glaze over, your mind wanders off, and before you know it, you just want to skip the whole chapter. It's a highly relatable experience. Most of us just want to bypass the boring genealogies and get straight back to the action. But what if we completely flipped the script? We kind of need to drop this modern, cynical view that these are just boring lists of unpronounceable names. Because the author of 1 Chronicles, they weren't just some ancient clerk taking attendance. No, they were putting together a highly dynamic map of God's grace and history. These names show exactly how the pieces of history were perfectly woven together to bring the audience to the exact moment they were standing in. Section 1. Beyond the boring names, finding identity. So, to really get why this list was such a game changer, we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the people who originally read it. They weren't sitting in a cozy library, right? They were in the middle of a massive identity crisis. First off, their ancient kingdom had completely collapsed. Then, they suffered through a brutal 70-year exile in Babylon, totally uprooted from their homes. And finally, when they did get to return, they came back to a ruined homeland. The walls of Jerusalem were rubble, the great temple was just ashes, and their whole community was scattered. Standing right there in the literal ruins, they were hit with this massive existential question. We are standing in ruins. Who are we? And where did we even come from? And maybe even more terrifying, where are we going? You see, when you lose your nation, your home, and your temple, you kind of lose yourself. The authors of Chronicles put these genealogical records together specifically to answer that desperate cry for identity. They were pointing back to their roots to say, hey, this is who you really are. Moving on to our next section, Grace over Shame, the Canvas of Judah. Let's look at our first major case study from the text. Usually, when people build their family trees, especially ancient royal ones, they heavily sanitize them. They spotlight the flawless heroes and just sweep the scandals right under the rug. But 1 Chronicles, it doesn't do that at all. Take a look at the sheer, messy transparency of Judah's lineage from Genesis 38. First, you've got the oldest son, who was literally struck down by God for his wickedness. Then his brother Onan, struck down for being selfish and refusing his family duty. Then there's Tamar, the daughter-in-law, who pulled off a highly scandalous deception on Judah himself. And from that deeply taboo, embarrassing union, you get the twins, Perez and Zerah. Seriously, any human editor would absolutely want to scrub this dark, shameful chapter from the official record. It's definitely not the origin story a proud tribe wants to broadcast. But here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. God doesn't erase our shameful chapters. He uses them as the foundational building blocks for grace. By putting this incredibly scandalous story front and center in the genealogy, the text is making a massive theological shift. It's declaring that the God they serve doesn't just work with perfect people. He takes our biggest mistakes, our deepest family shame, and uses it as the very raw material to build something beautiful. And this grace stretches incredibly far. If you fast forward to the New Testament, right there in Matthew chapter 1, verse 3, the writer actually makes a point to include Tamar, Perez, and Zerah in the direct lineage of Jesus Christ. That hidden, scandalous past wasn't just forgiven, it was literally woven into the genealogy of the Messiah. It proves that there is absolutely no chapter of your life so dark that it can't be redeemed and given a place of honor in God's story. Next up, the unseen artisan, Bezalel's calling. We're going to shift our focus away from scandalous royalty and point the spotlight squarely on the everyday worker. Tucked away a bit later in chapter 2 is a guy named Bezalel. What's super fascinating here is how God relates to him back in the book of Exodus. God calls him Bishem, which is a Hebrew term that means to be called by name. It implies this deep divine intimacy and a very specific purpose. God didn't just gesture vaguely at a crowd. He called Bezalel out individually. It proves the divine calling isn't exclusively reserved for, famous prophets leading nations or kings sitting on thrones. Just consider Bezalel's profile for a second. He wasn't a king, he wasn't some grand prophet delivering sermons, and he wasn't a priest offering sacrifices. He was a blue-collar craftsman. The guy had calloused hands.
He worked daily with gold, silver, bronze, and wood to physically build the ancient tabernacle. And the fact that his name is included in this ultimate grand historical map, that absolutely validates the holiness of behind-the-scenes manual labor. His craftsmanship carried the exact same spiritual weight as the words of a great prophet.
Section 4. Bound by Grace, the Book of Life Today. Let's pivot from ancient history to our immediate present-day reality, because this list actually has a huge application to you right now. There's a really direct parallel between that ancient world and our lives today. On one side, you have Bezalel's unseen ancient labor, building the physical tabernacle, cutting stone, crafting instruments. And on the other side, you have the modern unseen labor that keeps our own communities running today. You know who I'm talking about. It's the person setting up folding chairs early on a Sunday morning. It's the folks making coffee and prepping meals for community gatherings. It's the quiet individuals calling the sick during the week, or staying late to clean up after everyone else has already gone home. Now, if you are one of those people, I really want you to take this to heart. The world might easily forget the unseen worker, but God's record never misses a single faithful name. You might feel like your small, everyday contributions go completely unnoticed by the people around you. You might even think, hey, if I wasn't here, no one would even notice. But just like Bezalel's name was permanently etched into the historical record, your behind-the-scenes work is seen, it's valued, and it's permanently remembered by God. The Apostle Paul actually echoes this exact same concept in his letter to the Philippians. He writes, "Help these women whose names are in the book of life." He's talking about God's ultimate eternal memory here, and the crazy part, he applies it to people who were, frankly, highly imperfect community members.
Paul is referring to two women named Euodia and Syntyche. Let's look at their track record for a second. They literally argued directly with the Apostle Paul himself. They caused temporary friction and conflict within the early church. They were messy, and yet, despite all their flaws and the headaches they caused, Paul confidently declares that their names are still securely listed in the book of life. It's just a fantastic reminder that grace always covers our flaws. You don't have to be perfect to be eternally remembered and valued in his community.
Which brings us to a final, provocative thought for you to chew on. We are all part of a community woven together by grace, filled with people who have messy pasts like Judah and unseen workers like Bezalel. God has already placed the hidden past of the people around you in a seat of grace. He's covered their shame, and he deeply values their unseen labor. So the question for us today is, what seat are you offering them? Are you viewing your community through a harsh lens of judgment, or are you actively looking at them through God's radically forgiving, appreciative lens? Keep that question in mind the next time you look around your community. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.